You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGachy, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with me, because there are a million things you could be doing right now, and I really appreciate your time. So, in the interest of that, just a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get into this fantastic episode with my dude, Ian. So, if you've been trying to get a hold of me on the text chat, and I have not been responding, I apologize. The app has been bugging out on me a little bit, and I am working with tech support to try to resolve that. It has been very problematic suddenly out of nowhere. So I'm working on that, and I will let you know when things are back up and running. So if you're trying to get a hold of me and you have a question or you have a concern or anything I can help with, please hit me up via email, info@tonemob.com, and I will get to that as soon as possible. Apologize for any headaches that has caused anyone. I am not ignoring you. I am simply not receiving the messages at this moment. So working to resolve that as soon as possible. Additionally, if you are a top tier Patreon supporter, please make sure you check your inbox. I sent out a request that everybody update their addresses, and I don't know that everyone has received that. So please go in and update your addresses and let me know as soon as it's done, because, well, you can probably do the math as to why I may need your addresses updated. So those are the two little pieces to get out of the way. Let's get right into this interview with Ian Martin Allison. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff occasionally. Sometimes I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Ian Martin Allison from the internet, really. I think most people are probably familiar with you through Scott's bass lessons, but you've got your own stuff cooking too, so it doesn't feel fair to just say that. But Ian and I met briefly at GearFest after, I don't know, internet chatting here and there over the years. And I thought, why not get him on the show? It's kind of stupid that I haven't had him on, to be honest. So here we are, we're doing the thing and we're off to the races. So the best place to start is probably just, let's tell people about you. Like, when did you start playing bass?
Well, dude, hey, thanks for having me. And I mean, just to go back to that Sweetwater thing for a second, it was so funny. Like that event we were at, GearFest. Have you been to GearFest before? Like,
no, that was the first time I'd ever been there.
Man, me too. And I'm kind of like new to the internet. like I'm new to the content game. Yeah. I mean, I'm old, man. I'm 43 and I came up playing in a bunch of different bands and as a side musician, and then like really started to take the internet, like Instagram in particular, really seriously right after I turned 40. So about 3 years ago. And that's when the Scott's bass lesson stuff happened. So when I met you for the first time out there, I was just like, this is crazy. This is so fun. It's like all the people I've seen on the internet, you know? And dude, there's a funny moment where, we're all there and there, vendors that had like little, like swag bags and stuff. And I'm still like the puppy where I'm like, ooh, a shirt. Oh, yes. Picks. You know what I mean? And I was hanging around some real cool customers, man, like, like hanging out with, with Rhett and also Aaron Marshall from Intervals.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Aaron, do you know they've got picks over at the thing? And he was like, cool, man. And I just felt like, hey, want to go chase car Spike? He's like, yeah, right. Nah. And man, so it's so funny. I just had this energy of like, oh, this is brand new. And so it was so fun to meet you there. I just wanted to say like, you were super nice to me. And I just felt like a bit of a fish out of water because I haven't been in this world or like content world for very long. Mm-hmm. So sort of like, I don't know, man. I just feel like I'm getting my feet wet. But so thanks, dude. To answer your question, I mean, I won't bore you with these details, but I started to play the bass out of necessity. It's as most bass players do. It's like I wanted to be a drummer. My parents were like, no. We had a little house. I grew up in Montana, a small town in Montana called Kalispell. We had a little house, and they were like, no, they're not wanting to put a drum kit in there. And then, there were like friends of mine that were playing, and like a really good looking like kid was the lead singer. And then like the cool kid with like the skater hair was a guitar player, and then I couldn't have drums. So I was like, oh, God, fine. I'll be the stupid bass player. But then, I absolutely fell in love. I fell in love with it. I realized so quickly that it was the coolest instrument on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it is funny that you say that. And I feel like we all have some sort of like weird, like it's sometimes kind of straightforward, but not always. There's generally some sort of weird thing. I also thought I was going to be a drummer. And
drums are the coolest.
My mom in particular, because dad was at work, so he didn't really have to deal with it. But my mom, I've told this story a lot, so sorry, everybody. But my mom,
I can't wait.
My mom would let me, our house was like, I don't know, 1,200 square feet or so. So nothing crazy big, but not cramped, but like it was not a big house.
Right.
And, my bedroom was not that far from the kitchen, obviously. I would just crank. Like I didn't even know how to play the drums, and I would crank System of a Down on my stereo.
Yes.
And I had my friend sold me this Pearl drum kit for like $150 or $120 or something. I mowed lawns that pay for it, all that jazz. And I was just trying so hard to be a drummer. I had no idea what I was doing. I was terrible.
That's
like
the best,
absolutely terrible.
That's
and my mom would let me do that. Like she would just let me crank it. She'd be in there like doing dishes. And this is back in the day, right? She's not like she put on Bluetooth headphones and blocked it out or something.
Yeah, she was listening to every note.
Note in air quotes. Yeah.
Yes,
it was bad.
Right.
It was bad.
Man.
Oh, and that's actually kind of funny that I say that, because fast forward to Gear Fest is when I got to interview Shavo from System of a Down, which was wild.
Man.
So I was
cool
like, this is crazy.
I know.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
But I can't believe my mom let me do that. I don't even know if I would have the patience with my own kids. And music is like the most important thing to me. And I don't even know if I could deal with that.
I feel that too. My parents were incredibly supportive. Both my mom and my dad, actually, they divorced before I started to play, but I had practice spaces in both of their houses, dude.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and it was a loud band, and my mom would always bring down muffins. And I mean, just like the most supportive. And then I bought a drum kit because, I always wanted a drum kit. I bought a drum kit for my son, really bought it for me. But dude, I know that thing, because when he would get on it and start to like just make noise, it was like about 23 seconds, and I'd be, okay, buddy.
All right.
Let's, you want to go build some Legos? Maybe you want to watch a TV show?
Right.
I found that, like, man, the patience for that stuff is not a given,
No. And I am so spoiled because my kid, of course, does want to play drums. And of course, there's a drum kit here.
Yeah, there is.
And so, he's been taking drum lessons, but I'm so spoiled. But with having the shred shed, I just go, all right, you go out here with your teacher, and dad will be back later. And you guys just,
That's amazing. So how old is he? And is he studying drums right now, like actively?
He's 7. And I would say it's sick. More, well, we're in the process of finding a new instructor. Unfortunately, his really amazing instructor moved to Texas. So,
oh, shoot.
Yeah. So he had a great drum instructor named Michael for a while. And Michael's whole thing is like, he's an extremely proficient, like jazz drummer, and he's an incredible musician. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I hit the guitar pedal oscillation button. I don't know. Like, he's talking about sounds. Different time structures and stuff. And I'm like, does it go like 1, 2, 3, 4? Cause I got that one.
Yeah. Right.
But he doesn't put that pressure on the kid. That was cool. What was great about it. He was just like, what do you want to play? You want to play the song from Sing 2? We'll work on that. You want to
awesome.
One of the coolest things you would do would be like, it was just more about exploring sound. Mm-hmm. You would just be like, okay, we're going to make a story. with the drums. And so my kid would literally like, okay, the bird flies over here and then the crocodile talks to him. And it's like, what does that sound like,
so
you know, in your head?
That's really
And I was like,
cool.
this is such a cool approach. And my kid like just ate it up. So trying to find somebody else who kind of fits that same vibe, because I certainly have no business teaching him drums.
Wow,
but,
man.
Yeah.
That's actually
cool.
really inspiring to me. That idea of like, let's think about, you know, cinematically or a narrative or pictures instead of like, let's learn this beat and let's count it 1 and 2 and 3 and, you know, like thinking about, man, do you know, I have a really good friend named Steve Gould. He's a drummer. Do you know Steve by chance?
That name sounds extremely familiar.
He's played with a bunch of different folks, but he has this thing where when he sits down with a student, the first thing he does, and he used to run like a music program at a church, or like he was the head of the music of this big church in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
Called CCV. Anyway, when he would sit down with a student, no matter if it was a drum student or guitar or bass, he would say, play me track 1 on your solo album. And they'd go, what? And he'd go, what's track 1 sound like? And they'd go, and he said it was wild how so many people, even pros, like professional musicians, had never really thought for a moment about how to play their instrument by themselves. Right. Like a bass player, you know, other than maybe just like noodling licks that you know, but like think about like, wow, what would that be like? And I mean, it's way more of a pressure environment than like, let's talk about like the turtle going over the hill. But that's kind of a cool way into it, actually. So it's funny. Like he said that when people would do it, it would start to unlock, you know, who you really are. And then after they'd get done, sometimes he'd say, great, what's track 2? You know?
Yeah.
And dude, I love it. I mean, I think about that stuff a lot now, but I really love that idea with kids. My son is 7 as well. And I love that idea with kids, not like, okay, hold the sticks like this, dude. All right, the kick drum. Oh, no, a little early there, you know, but just like, yeah, what is it like to explore this instrument? That's really, I'm going to take that away from this. I thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks, Michael. Thanks, out there Michael. In Texas now. Dude,
thanks, Michael, wherever you are. It's a sick way of instructing the youth. Very cool.
Yeah. And of course there is like all right, we're going to count, you know, we're going to do a beat, right? There is that too, but he injects enough like play into it, literal play, that it makes it interesting for a kid who has an attention span of a gnat.
Which is every kid.
Much like
really.
His dad.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, me too, man. I know. I get it. Wow. That's really cool. I hope you find somebody like that. You just have to have him call up Michael and be like, hey man, talk to me about your pedagogy.
Yeah.
Teach me how to teach.
Yeah. Well, fortunately it sounds like whoever is the next one will come from Michael. So he's asking around some friends. So
nice.
Hopefully that ends up happening. And a shout out to listener and Patreon supporter, Brandon Sauce, Mr. Sauce, as his students call him, because he is the one who got me in touch with Michael in the first place. So that was really great.
It's a community, the Tone Mob community. Come on.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Yep.
Very cool.
So we kind of got sidetracked though. So you're relatively new to the content game, which is interesting because you've done, in my view, like really well with it in a very short amount of time. I guess sometimes I'm not sure sometimes I feel like I'm getting long in the tooth with it, but at the same time, it does feel fresh. I feel very much the same as you did at Gearfest. I was like, what? What? You want me to do what?
I know,
like,
man.
Are you sure that you want me to do that? Like, not Rhett Scholl? Like, you want me to do that?
I know.
You know, but you know, your stuff is really high quality, and obviously, you know, to get involved with the SBL, you know, situation. How did that happen, and what's that been like for you?
I mean, it's been incredible and a whirlwind. It's been an absolute whirlwind. But the way I got into it is actually, I think, could be a blueprint for so many people listening of like, if you want an opportunity, man, it comes down to really how I think about social media. And I could talk about this forever, and I'll try to keep it relatively brief.
No, please do.
But
please do.
All right. But I mean, I think that so many people view social media as a sales platform or as a platform of asking, like, hey, come to my show. Hey, listened to my album. Hey, buy my product, right? It's always an ask, cloaked in some kind of fun entertainment thing. And I get it. And it's all good. And I do that stuff too. But I really felt the power of this other thing, which was just giving. So instead of like when in the early days, especially when I would make a post, I would really try to ask who it's for. And if it was for me, if I'm like, oh, this is for me, I'm showing off that I can slap this thing, or like, ooh, I would try to make an angle that if you watched it, you would come away either entertained, inspired, or educated, like you'd learn something. And, that just removes this idea of like, oh, this is just a platform to lift me up and to show people how bad I am. It's more like, what can I do for someone watching? And so that content model really changed everything for me. Like in the beginning, I was just viewing it like everybody else, or like a lot of people, like a highlight reel.
Right.
Like, oh, I just need to post, and and then hopefully someone will want to hire me or whatever. And it was very passive. And I think part of that is like out of fear and ego of just like, I need to make people think that I'm good and cool, because if they don't, I won't be successful. But the instant I started to make posts about like when Fender moved the tug bar from the treble side strings up to above the E string and made it a thumb rest. And like, I am such a nerd and such an enthusiast about equipment, the bass, different styles. When I started to do like album breakdowns or song breakdowns on my channel, that then we just took that model to SBL, and I started to give and not be worried about what if people would think it was stupid or nerdy that, I mix these gauge of flats for the optimal tension on this particular P bass. Like, I think that sometimes people think that their proclivities and their interests are going to be boring or going to be perceived as too nerdy or stupid or not artistic and not musical. And I just decided after I turned 40, I had a midlife crisis, or I have a friend that says it was a spiritual awakening, which I like better.
That sounds nicer.
Yeah, it's way better, right? That I wasn't going to hide that stuff anymore. For the longest time, I was like hiding kind of who I was and trying to be cool guy, trying to always like fool you that I was the right guy for every gig. And I stopped doing that. And that's when stuff really grew. So with SBL, check it out. I was redoing a little studio space, putting new floors in. I wasn't doing it. There was a guy doing it, but I was sort of documenting the process instead of trying to, just make cool content. I was like, oh, look, we got this much done today. And just really, bringing people along on that ride that wanted to come along.
Right.
And I noticed that Scott Devine from Scott's Bass Lessons had started to watch the stories. Because you can see in your metrics, right, of course, who watches. And I just noticed like, oh, there's that red SBL logo. And I saw that he was watching all of it. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. And then there was about a week that I didn't upload anything. It was before I was trying to do things consistently, I was kind of doing it when inspiration struck. And I hadn't uploaded something in a while. And then I woke up to like double the followers. I had like 1,000 followers at the time, and I woke up to 2,000. Like when you see the icon at the top of the phone that shows you the hearts and it shows you the message bubble and it shows you the follower, and it said like 987 or something. I was like, what?
You're like, what happened? There's a glitch.
Yeah, dude. And Scott had gone on to his social media and said, there's this guy that I've started to watch all his stories. His name is Martin Allison, and he's gone. He hasn't posted in a week, and it's killing me. I'm missing, I miss him. I miss watching the stories. And so everybody right now needs to go follow Ian and tell him that he can't stop posting on Instagram.
Wow.
And it was like doubled. And then I was like, oh my God. And then at that point I was like, oh, I think I'm onto something here. And so what I did is something that I would recommend to everybody to do. Whoever you want to get in touch with, think about what you can give to them meaningfully. So what I did is I DM'd Scott. I mean, I could find the DM. I DM'd him and said, man, thank you so much for putting me on. That's a huge thing that you did for me. And that's, incredible. I'm a big fan, which was true. I watched everything he did from even before he had the subscription service, when he was just making YouTube lessons, you know, in his old apartment in Leeds. And I said to him, I love what you do, and I'm good at X, Y, and Z. Like, I feel confident around these 3 things or whatever it was. And I will do that for you, no questions asked, for like a year, and you don't have to pay me. Like, I'm in. And he was like, whoa, he got back to me and was like, wow, man, that's amazing. Actually, we could use somebody to do X and we could use somebody to do Z, but I'm not going to, like, I would love to pay you. Like, you know, here's typically what we do. And it's wild, man. I think, like, I know this is controversial, but I think when you don't have a name, or when you don't have leverage, your time is your leverage. You know, if you don't have a name, if you're not Blue to Tiger or Victor Wooten, or you have nothing, you know, you're just some dude, right? And I was just some dude. And so I said, I will work really hard for you and I'll kill it for nothing. And he said, amazing, but I'll give you something, but let's try a couple things out. So he gave me an opportunity and I killed it to the best of my ability. And then he gave me another thing and it led to all this stuff. And dude, that has just been my model. And I know there are people that are like, oh, you're devaluing the industry and blah, blah, blah. But the only people that say that are established old guard dudes that are like, oh man, oh, don't do that. Don't go on Fiverr. Oh, don't do that gig for free, because I couldn't disagree more. Actually, I think that your leverage is your time and your opportunity. And then, of course, yes, at some point you need to get paid. But I'm a very big believer of like the free trial. Like, I want to demonstrate to people that I'm worth hiring, that I'm worth working for. And I'm happy to do that for free. And I mean, you know, there's always a rate that I like to get paid. So if someone hits me up to play on their record, I'm not just doing all that for free. But man, there are still people that hit me up to play on something, and I'll send them my rate. I'll say, for sure, this is typically what I get on a song. And they'll say, oh, you know, that's maybe a little too high. And I'll be like, or I'll do it for free, or I'll do it for $50. It doesn't matter. Like, what you get from that at bat, like what you get from working with Scott or playing on someone's record, is so much bigger than the small fee you might get in the beginning of your career. Like, the opportunity that you get to then go on and do something else. And it's funny, man. I've talked about this before, and I've gotten a lot of shade of like, oh, you know, sounds like someone that grew up with money, which is not true. and like, oh man, you know, well, some of us have got to eat. And I'm like, well, I have to eat too. I just prioritize different things. Like, the time that I would spend watching movies or something was the time that I was going to be knocking out that track for somebody. The time that I was going to be researching to do an interview for Scott. You know, so I think it's about what you give. And then it comes back. At least for me, my experience has been, after I've gone through that process of giving, it has come back like tenfold. Versus if I would have said to Scott, hey man, yeah, cool, here's what I charge. Here's my day rate. Here's what or like say that to artists that are starting out, dude, I never do that thing. And it typically, I never feel like I get taken advantage of ever.
So, you know, and, you know, maybe this is a perspective that I share with you, because I never in a million years thought that I was going to get to do like anything music related for any kind of money ever at all.
Crazy.
I never thought that I was going to be in the music industry in any shape whatsoever.
Yes.
So I just assumed that music always just cost me money. Like, my love of guitar and gear just cost me money. It was never a thing that I'm like, this is going to be something I'm going to be able to pay the bills with until much, much later in my life.
Same.
And so now I'm at this point where it's starting to happen that I'm being asked to play on certain things.
Yep.
There's something coming up I'm really excited about. I can't say much about it yet, but I was asked to play on something And they're like, and this other person's playing on a track too. And I'm like, I don't belong in the same sentence as that
Yes,
person.
right.
You know, like, what are you talking about?
And isn't that so rad? I mean, what a cool thing, you know?
Yeah. I'm sitting here going like, why in my head, I got this imposter syndrome rolling. Like, why would you ever want me to play on it when you could pick all of these other people to play on it?
Yeah.
Why are you asking me? And I know that's kind of not a fair thing to think, because, you know, that I can do some things that other people can't, you know, and vice versa. But I don't know if I'm ever going to get over that. There's always going to be that little voice, right?
But
being
dude,
like,
that means you're like
dude.
a functioning dude. That means you're a functioning human being and not like a malignant narcissist. Like the fact that you're like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I deserve to be in the room with these people. That means you're like a good human. Like imagine the opposite.
Well, you know, that's a fair point.
Yeah, the opposite. People are like, oh, I'm better than all these jokers. Like that's the person nobody wants to play with.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
I mean, I think a little imposter syndrome is actually really healthy. I mean, obviously, if it cripples you and you can't move forward, obviously there's like levels of it, right, where it's awful. But man, I feel that way too. I'm not the fastest. I'm not the best. I'm not the most knowledgeable. But I think probably for you, what it is for me is people want to hire me because I have a perspective. I have like a thing that I do that maybe is different than, you know, it's just a flavor. It's a voice. Mm-hmm. And I'm really proud of that voice. And I know that you have that too. And so that's why people hire you. It's not because, you know, you need to know, you know, all the modes of melodic minor and shred over giant steps. Like no one hires anyone for that.
Right.
Very rarely. You know? And yet we think that like, oh, we have to be equipped with all these like jazz bro chops, or we need to be faster, or I don't know. It's weird. No one hires anyone for that.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Marist Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Marist is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations and 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at marist.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services. And it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. And I think, you know, what I need to remember, and anybody else listening to this needs to remember, is if somebody's coming to you and asking you to do something, odds are that they have heard you do something before that they liked.
Definitely.
So don't worry about that so much. You know, it's like they wouldn't have asked you if they didn't think it was cool. They would have asked somebody else.
That's so true. And it's such a risk because it's such a vulnerable thing. Like if you ask someone to play on something and then it doesn't go well, oh God. Like that's such
true.
a bummer. I mean, and I've had that. I mean, you know, everyone has had that to some degree, but like what I'm saying is you're absolutely right. No one just like out of the blue is like, maybe this will be cool. It's like, no, there's a reason. There's a reason they asked you. They looked at all your videos. They checked you out. They like your vibe. They like the sounds you make on the guitar. And that's why they ask. I mean, that's absolutely for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm still trying to process that occasion, like it's happening. It's not like it happens every day, but it's happening with way more frequency than I ever would have imagined. So
the fact that you're still trying to process it means that you're a good human being. So
I try awesome. Really hard. Sometimes I fail.
Like no entitlement. That's really good.
Yeah, but it is, you're right. What you were talking about, like doing the free thing, I understand. I can also understand the argument of why people would think that is devaluing to a certain degree. But the reality is everyone that's been successful in the music industry, especially from a performance standpoint, they've done a lot of free stuff.
No doubt.
A lot of free stuff.
Totally.
Bad gigs, even if you don't consider it free, like how many like money losing tours do bands go on constantly?
Yes.
Sure, they get paid at the gig, but like overall, when they get home, 99.9% of people don't come home with any money. In fact, they might have lost money.
Right.
So this idea that you should never do anything for free is, on one hand, I do understand it's work and it's valid work and people should deserve to be compensated for that work. But if you are going at it with that mindset, if I went at it with that mindset, this show wouldn't exist. I mean, I didn't have sponsors right away. I didn't have any way of monetizing it right away.
No, of course.
It took a long time, and it took people being interested in the free thing to then want to support for the extra things. It's like the amount of work that goes into this. I've said this quite a bit on the show too. There's a quote flying around that I don't know where it came from. I think it applies to any creative endeavor. And it said an entrepreneur is somebody who works 80 hours so they don't have to work a 40. And that's me. Like that is me 100%.
Dude, I know. Yeah. It's so, that is so funny. I've never heard that before. That's really great. But yeah, like you could work 24 hours a day on your thing.
Easily.
Easily. Yeah. Easily. And then you'd still want to clone yourself. You'd still want like some way to keep it moving. Man, it's really true. And I think, I've just seen some stuff from like some high profile musicians that have said like, oh, if you're going on Fiverr or if you're doing things for free, you're taking work away from me. And I'm just like, dude, no way. Because you have to start somewhere. You have to do something, and you have to build resume and repertoire. And you have to like, how people are like, when they start to take photos, they're like, can I just take photos because I need to build my portfolio? That's what it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I have another, just a great tangible story where this has really worked that I think too, like, I'd love to just tell you this because I think it might be really helpful for some of your listeners. Like, I think a lot of creative people have stuff in their phones, right? At least I'm always writing little riffs and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I'll put it in my phone. Yeah. And then I feel kind of good that like, oh, I was creative, but there it stays in my phone. And I am terrible about actually finishing a song, really bad at it. It's something I beat myself up about it. I need to get better at it, but it's just true. But there was a time where I had played this slap lick and it was kind of cool, but it sounded like not me really. It was like, whoa, it was like kind of funky, kind of Prince vibes. Mm-hmm. And I, at the time, and still am really good friends with Corey Wong. And he was in Minneapolis and he lives in Minneapolis. And so I had this voice memo thing and I just sent it to him. And I was like, hey man, I played this riff and it just reminded me of you. And like, I just thought you'd get a kick out of it. So like, check it out, dude. And like nothing about like, hey man, let's collab. Hey man, like if you want it, you put me on there with writing credits. I'm like, no, I just was like, hey man, I thought you would get a kick out of it. And he was like, dude, this is dope. He was like, what are you doing tomorrow? And I was like, oh, nothing. And he's like, come over, let's write this. And I was like, I was blown away. So I went over to Corey Wong's house. We wrote it. It's called That's My Passport Photo. It came out on his first record, Corey Wong and the Green Screen Band. It's the last track.
Nice.
And like we wrote it in an afternoon, and then we went and got Chipotle and talked about touring and being dads and balancing that. And then I went home. But the crazy thing is it's such a tangible thing. I get asked all the time in DMs of people like, what can I do? How do you get into a scene? You know, how do you meet all that? And I'm like, send someone something. This goes back to like this idea of a gift or not asking. That interaction would have gone very different if I would have hit Corey and said, hey man, can I play on one of your songs? Mm-hmm. Like, gag me, dude. Never. I would never do that. But instead, I was like, hey, here's something with no strings attached that I thought you might just get a kick out of listening to. Right. Comes out of the blue on your phone. You know, not saying that it's always going to lead to a track on Corey Wong's record. But since then, I've done that a lot, where I've sent people things, just like songwriters that I know, and I'd had this thing. I'm like, this reminds me of you. And it like always leads to something. It always leads to like coffee or a nice text conversation, and sometimes a song, and sometimes it just gets you back on that person's radar. But it's like, it's just almost like a letter or something. You're like, hey, it's just a little gift. Like, hey, I'm just thinking of you. Zero strings attached. It is the best. It's like the most tangible piece of like this thing in your quiver that you can do is actually just send someone something. Send someone some music. If you know somebody that needs beats, send them a beat. If you know somebody that needs a patch for a pedal and you made it, send it to them. And like it opens up all this other opportunity. So anyway, thanks. I just think that like, I wish someone would have said that to me a long time ago. I had all this stuff around like, oh, I got to be professional. And that means I have to charge money and, oh, never give away my best idea. And dude, I am the opposite now. If I write something really cool and I think it's cool, I send it to somebody. And I'm like, dude, I think this is cool. Could you use this in any way? Or does this inspire anything in you? I give it away. I give it away always. And it always leads to something that is positive.
I don't know what kind of like weird universe we're living in at this moment, but I said I couldn't really talk about the project that I was asked to play on. I still can't, because I don't think any of that's been public yet. But I did mention this part of it on my personal Facebook page, if I remember correctly. But Corey Wong was actually the guy I was referring to. It was like, I don't belong playing on a record that he's playing on, you know, dude, like that doesn't make any sense. But then when you said that, I was like, okay, I got to say it. I got to say that now.
Oh man.
It's not the same song. We're not doing anything together or anything like that. I was just like, they were like, this person was like, hey, Corey's playing on this record. We got a song done already, and I'd love to do a track with you too. I was like, what?
Oh, dude, that's so cool. Congratulations. That's very cool.
The vibes couldn't be more different. And then I heard Corey's song and I was like, oh no, this makes so much sense. I totally understand how this fits together now.
Oh, cool. You know? That's so cool, man. Congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you. But yeah, I don't even think Corey knows about that. I just was a little bit starstruck. I'm like, okay.
Corey's a busy dude, man. I know. It's wild. Yeah, he's moving and shaking always.
He is. Yeah, I know. Like when we did a episode together, it was great. He gave me all the time that I needed, but like I could tell as soon as the episode's over, he's like, that was wonderful. Thank you. I got to go to a thing. And I was like, I'm sure that you do. I am sure that you do.
Yeah, that dude is. So Steve Gould, who's the drummer I mentioned before, he and I have done some sessions with Corey over the years, and we call Corey Wong High Output, all in caps. That's his nickname. It's actually stupid because it's longer than his name, but we call him High Output, man, because that guy, there was a time on a session where I saw him listening to the verse, talking about the verse, and in one hand he had a phone and he was texting someone a photo, and in the other hand he had a laptop and he was like working on like chopping down a sample or something. And it was wild because it didn't seem like the multitask was difficult or that his attention wasn't in the room. He was just doing three things at the same time.
I can't do that. I can't do that, man. I can barely walk and chew gum at the same time. It's terrible.
Same.
Yeah, that's wild. But let's get back to you a little bit here. So like you fell in love with the bass, and it's interesting because like I fell immediately in love with the electric guitar. As soon as I started playing electric guitars, it was all I wanted to do. And it took me basically until this year to have that same feeling with a bass, a particular bass. Yeah. I walked into my friend Hank's, he has Hank's Music Exchange here in Portland. And I walked in and I was just kind of looking around. He always has the coolest stuff. Yeah. Always. And I was looking at this bass and I'm going, wow, I've never seen this before. And it was I think like an early 70s Japanese made Epiphone. I think it's an ET-285, I believe. Crazy. Is the yeah. And I was like, I didn't even know this existed. I had no idea this was a thing. It's got 2 humbuckers in it. Yeah. You know, and I picked it up and I'd never had this moment with a bass before. I picked it up, went do 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 do, and I was like, this is mine. This like, you know, I've had that with guitars many times, but never have I had. I've played a lot of basses, even though it's not my main thing. I've definitely picked up basses. I'm like, this is cool, but this one I was like, how much is it? Yeah.
What about it? Why?
I don't know. I'm looking at it right now, and it was cheap too. I think it was $600. Yeah. Yeah, it was not expensive. And I look at it, it's literally hanging next to my prized possession, a 1955 Les Paul Jr. that belonged to my grandpa. Oh wow. And I'm looking at it and I have the same feeling as when I look at the Junior. It doesn't make any sense.
Which one would you save if the house were on fire?
Oh, it's definitely the Junior.
Yeah. Now, bass. Don't be getting a big head here, like Epiphone bass. Like you're going to burn in the house fire.
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, really, unfortunately, I had to answer that question. I'd asked that question for years on the podcast. If you had one guitar, what are you going to save? Oh. And in 2020, the fires around here were so bad, and that's never happened even in my grandpa's lifetime in this area. And I was like, we got put on an evac notice, and I was like, wow, I'm literally having to answer that question because I can't fit all of these. So I took the Junior, put it in my truck, and it was a weird feeling. Whoa. Everything was fine. Fortunately, we didn't have to leave. Wow. Yeah. But I think I posted it on Instagram even. I was like, I never thought I'd actually have to answer this question, but here we go.
Brutal. Yeah. Oof. That's that's like trauma stuff, man. I'm sorry. That sucks.
Fortunately, it was all fine. Yeah. Everything was totally okay. So I know I shouldn't say that. Some people, it wasn't. For us, we got lucky and it was totally fine. Yeah. So thankful for that, for sure. But yeah, back to that bass. I think it has to do with the aesthetics. It also has tiny frets. I like tiny frets. Yeah. I do too. Know. I just love it. I just love playing it. I love looking at it. It's beat up in all the right ways. Mm-hmm. And I think I like it. Maybe the thing I like about it the most is I think it's very aesthetically beautiful, and I've never seen it before.
Dude, you got to grab it. You got to show it to us.
Okay, let me get it. Just a second.
Come
it's
on,
right
dude,
here.
Get it.
It's right here. Come here. Just a second, everyone.
See, here
we go.
This is just, so selfish because I just want to see this thing. Glad you guys get to
most people hear this on audio, but this video will come out at some point. So there you go.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, man, very cool. Mm-hmm. What a great looking instrument.
Yeah. And it's got all the right wear.
Yeah. You know? Dude, I did this thing where I fell in love with a bass. I fell in love with this Antigua jazz bass, 1978, which coincidentally is the same year I was born.
I love those.
Me too.
Those are great.
I fell in love with it. And I was like, this is the best bass. And then I went on the forums, I was like on Talkbass and I started to read about like, the late 70s is bad. And like, if a bass is heavy, that means it's bad. And like, my pickups aren't very strong. Maybe I should put a preamp in and it put me on this search for like the holy grail, trying to beat it. Mm-hmm. With all these other things. And I probably spent tens of thousands of dollars over a decade and a half trying to like beat that instrument. And I could never, because I think it's like the best bass is the one you have kind of, there's like a thing of like, the best instrument is the one that you've poured the time into, like if you think about, I don't know, like I think about the classic players like Stevie Ray Vaughan or those instruments weren't super special. He was special. Or like I think about James Jamerson in bass world. Yeah. Like maybe Stevie Ray had a really fancy Strat. I don't know. But like in bass world, James Jamerson went into a store and bought a 62 P bass. Now, cool instruments, but that was just what was at the store.
That's just what they had. Yeah.
It's just what they had, dude. And he bought it, and that became this iconic, incredible bass. But it wasn't because of the bass. It's because of all the hours and the sweat and the, that he put into that. And I think that's actually what people respond to more than anything. Like, it's cool. It's cool that you got that Epiphone and now you don't want to hunt down like the expensive Gibson version of it, or like, and I don't know, maybe you do, but
I don't even think there is one.
Yeah,
I don't even think it exists, but I get your point.
That's good. Because I did that, dude. I had a Epiphone Jack Cassidy bass, which is like a big hollow body. And then I realized, oh, Gibson made that. It's actually called a Les Paul signature bass. And I was like, oh man, I got to get that. And I fall prey to that whole thing of like, oh yeah, I've got to get the best one. Oh yeah, I need to find a good example of, but it doesn't matter. What matters is like the time you put in and learning the quirks and deciding that the quirks are cool, because people want to see you like feel free on an instrument, and they don't care what the top is on the PRS, and like, God, it's just for other nerds. But that said, I'm saying that, and I mean, I'm just calling myself out. It's only an indictment on me, because I know that is true, and yet I still am trying to find, like, still haven't found what I'm looking for. And I'm like buying. Oh, it's just so dumb. So good for you, man. That bass looks rad.
Yeah. You're gonna have to play it one of these days.
I'd love to play it.
It's a beast. It's a beast.
I'd love to play it.
It's great. But what you're saying, it's sort of antithetical to the whole like tone chasing, gear chasing thing that I have made a weird career out of somehow. But it's totally true. I have all these wonderful instruments. I love every single one of them. They're all. I'm the type of guy that is like, I'm not going to buy necessarily the same exact model. Like some people like to collect Gretches or Telecasters or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not hating on that at all.
Yeah.
I just like to collect guitars, and so I like to fill holes. I'm like, ooh, I don't have a regular Telecaster. I better get a regular Tele. I don't have a 335, and I don't have a 335. So I'm thinking, I should probably get a 335. That's usually how I go. I do have a few Les Pauls. They're all pretty different, and where I'm going with that is my first electric guitar was my red Les Paul Special humbuckers. Played all kinds of punk rock shows and recorded all kinds of different, weird tracks with it. And it's a great, great guitar still. And it's so funny because it's the one that I still have. I'm so spoiled. I have all these incredible instruments, but I pick up that 2005, at the time it was like $400.
Yeah.
Les Paul. And I'm immediately transported back, and I'm like, this guitar still feels like home. Yep. It still feels like home. It's crazy how comfortable it is for me. And it's not even how I would spec a Les Paul out if I was like having a custom built one.
Sure.
It's got like a 60s.
How you should, though. Might be how
maybe
you should.
So. Like it's got like a thinner 60s neck. I tend to think that I like fat necks. Like there's so many things about it. Lately I'm like, oh, I like single coils better, but I'm like, man, that thing sounds so good with the humbuckers. And so, basically I'm a walking contradiction.
That's I know. Yeah. Dude, it's funny that you mentioned this. I actually don't meet too many people that have the same disease that I do, which is I call it like the thumbprint basses. So for me, it's also filling holes. Like, okay, I want one just nice example, like a good playing. I don't care about necessarily if it's in pristine shape, or like I want it to play well, and I want to use it. I want to play it. Like it needs to play well. It needs to sound good. But of all the thumbprint basses, so like an early 50s P, then a 50s, and then a jazz, and then like a Coronado bass and a Guild Starfire and a Hofner,
Coronado bass is so cool.
Yeah, dude. I mean, and and the funny thing is in the beginning, I'm like, there's like 10 classic basses. There's 10. And I'll get those, over these next number of years. I'll try to find them, and then I'll be totally good. But then the problem is your idea of classic keeps expanding, and so I'm like, oh, okay, I got the stuff, from the early days that I really, and two, like, I'm fine with custom shop versus, like, I don't have a real 50s P bass. Like,
Sure.
I have a really cool custom shop one, but I have some vintage things. But the problem for me is, like, then I get nostalgic, and I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. And so the 80s stuff starts to become, I'm like, ooh, getting a Steinberger would be kind of dope. Like, ooh, getting a Kubicki Factor. Oh, getting like that weird Fender Jazz Bass Special that Duff McKagan played. Like, it just continues to, like, expand. And then the 90s popped in for me recently, where it's like, oh, I should probably get like a Ken Smith 6-string. Like,
Well, yes,
dude,
of course.
just
Yes.
like, oh my God. And so it just never, ever ends. And I think, like, oh yeah, after this, all the holes are filled. But then all you do is you just go, and there's a whole nother punch card.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just right there.
We're broken individuals, because, like, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, what do you think of, like, super strats
Yes.
and, like, neon colored, shredder guitars, I'd have been like, ew, those are stupid. Like, why would I ever want one of those?
Right.
And now I'm like, oh, I really, really want, like, a late 80s, the Fender Japan HM Strat, like, in just the brightest, most obnoxious color possible.
Yep.
I really want one for some reason. I'm so jonesing for a super strat right now, and it makes absolutely no sense.
Dude, I remember a time when all that stuff from the late 80s, like Hamers and Charvels and Jacksons and stuff, you couldn't give them away. Kramers, you couldn't give them away. Basses too. They were pointy. BC Rich. Oh my God. It was just laughable, and you just would get laughed out of the room. And then it's like this with everything. Cars, like architecture, enough time goes by, it just gets hip again.
I know.
It gets hip. And so, like, if you have any guitars, like, mark my words, if you have any guitars from, like, the early 2000s, like, there's periods now where, like, oh, there's stuff that is, like, not considered cool at all, like, in the zeitgeist, but it will, like, trust me, all that stuff from, like, 2005 that is, like, not cool right now, that is going to be valuable, like, in 10 more years. It'll be like, oh my God, remember that, like, emo, remember, like, the faded, like, the Gibson faded black and, like, the faded red. Like, I used to work. That's
the Les Paul that I'm talking about.
Dude, yeah. Sick. That's so rad, dude. That guitar, mark my words, is going to be like a collector piece at some point. It will.
We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby, because let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Goodhertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblissaudio.com. I think you're going to like what you find.
You might be right about that.
I promise you, because I mean, if I would have thought that I would start to see PV T40 basses, dude, I bought a T40 in a pawn shop in the early 2000s for like $189. And now they're like over $1,000. Trust me, the power of nostalgia is more powerful than any other force, and it will drive. It has driven the guitar market before. It will continue to drive it because we'll get old, we'll get more money, and then you'll have sold you won't, but people will have sold that first guitar.
Yeah.
The Highway 1, P bass that they had. And they'd be like, dude, remember those Highway 1s?
Those are kind of tight, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then they don't know that 2,500 other people have thought that too. And the reverb price is now like $29.99.
It's so funny that you specifically said the faded one, because I was like, yeah, that's the red faded one. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Did you buy it at Mars Music by chance?
No, I got it at Guitar Center. Well,
okay.
I didn't get it. Actually, there's a photo of me. I've posted it before, but I talk about it once in a while because it is the first time I think, because back in the day, like not everybody was walking around with a camera in their pocket at all times, right? So we don't have quite as much documentation as we do now.
Right.
And I think that is the first time that there was any picture of me as a, somewhat more mature person, not a little kid. I was like 16.
Sure.
Yeah. There's a picture of me opening that for graduation.
Oh, that's so cool, dude.
And the look on my face.
Yeah, man.
I'm like, and I remember
better.
when it happened, I would open, because I was expecting I knew I was getting an electric guitar because that was the only thing I'd asked for. It was like 16, I weird story, but I graduated when I was 16 and I was just like, I want an electric guitar so I can play with my band. That's what I want to do. And, I thought I would end up, I gave Dad a list of things that were kind of in the ballpark. Fortunately, my dad played guitar, so that helped a lot.
Yeah.
But he, I thought I was going to get an ESP or a Schecter or something. And those are great too. There's nothing wrong with those at all. Yeah. They make great guitars. But a Les Paul is what I really wanted.
Yeah, dude.
I want a Les Paul. All the bands I was watching were playing Les Pauls.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's completely out of the question. That's not going to happen. That's too much money. There's no way. And my mom found this thing. Guitar Center used to do this event called The List. And so what you do, you walked in the door and there was a list of things that were just ridiculously discounted for whatever reason. And so they would do this event. And my mom and dad walked in and they were looking at the list and were like, hey, what's this, Gibson faded? What's this about? And they were like, oh, that's sold. That one's gone. So dad was looking at all kind of the list of things I had given him and he was checking them out. And my mom was like walking around the store and she's like, this one looks like what you're talking. She doesn't play, she's like, this one looks like
Is this that one?
Is that the one? And she brought my dad over like, this looks like the one that's kind of stuck back in the corner here. And the sales guy was like, oh yeah, I thought that was gone already. And dad played it and he's like, oh, this is the one we're buying because it was basically the same price.
Yeah.
And so I opened that up, seeing Gibson on the headstock, saw Les Paul laying there.
On the headstock,
I was like,
and you were,
that's it. That's it.
and they transported you into a life of gear addiction.
Yes, immediately.
That's incredible.
But yeah, there's a photo of me that with the case open and the smile is just
so great.
It's crazy. It was a crazy moment.
I love it.
Yeah, that's probably the first real smile that I had in a photo. I'm not smiling like my graduation photos. Like, hey, that was a real smile,
a genuine smile.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was telling Scott too. There was a time. Do you remember Carvin? Remember the Carvin catalog? Dude, I lived in Montana and I would get that Carvin catalog and I would just drool. And I saved up all my money. I was in the 8th grade and I bought myself a Carvin Koa neck through 6-string bass, dude.
Yeah.
And I loved Dream Theater and I loved Primus. And I was like, this is going to be so sick. I skipped right over the 5, dude. I had the 4 and I was like, but I'm not going to play a 5. I'm going to play a 6. And so, dude, I'll never forget, man, walking home. Like you say, walking home from junior high and I saw UPS had delivered it. It was a big box that said Carvin on it. Yeah. And I ran, and I opened it up, cracked that case, opened it up and I screamed. There was no, I was like, ah, in my house, just freaking out because just how it looked and smelled. And yeah, I mean, that stuff is priceless. Those are the defining moments, That's
right.
When you're just going to be a gearaholic for
the rest of your days. It never goes away. And you know what? Genuinely, I mean this genuinely. Like sometimes I feel like I'm getting a little jaded. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I care about our stuff as much as I used to. Blah 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 blah. And then something, I don't know. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Will trigger me, and I'm like,
yeah.
And then it'll show up, and I'll be like, there it is.
Yeah, and you're that like high school kid again,
Mm-hmm.
It's the best, dude.
It's
the best. It's the best disease.
And I try to like be objective, right? I try to be like, no, that's silly, whatever. But
Same.
the time when I realized that I'm just totally hopeless with this was actually this recent Stranger Things thing.
Oh, yeah.
When he's playing it in the Upside Down, Eddie's playing in the Upside Down. I was like, I've never liked BC Riches one time in my entire life. And right now I want a BC Rich.
And you're like you're just on Reverb, like searching warlocks and like.
Yeah, I was like, all of a sudden I want a warlock. I used to joke about warlocks.
Of course.
Be like,
Same.
how stupid that is. And I'm like, I could play a warlock. Give me one of those.
Definitely. It's just like the amount of time that has to go by. To where like it's so funny. I've got buddies that, live in LA, and I guess there's like a LA bass text thread that like all the bass players in LA like send, pictures, they just communicate with each other. There's like 100 bass players on this thing that all live in LA, or a lot, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to a guy who said it was wild just to see the shift, because for the longest time it was like vintage. It's like, oh man, vintage harmony, vintage P bass. Oh, look at this sweet sunburst jazz bass. Everyone, ooh, yeah. Oh, that's going to be a lifer. And then pretty soon it was like, I don't know, guys. I just got this I got this pink Ibanez, and who knows? It's kind of dumb, but it just reminds me of like being a kid. Everyone like, ha ha ha. And then somebody else like, yeah, man, I got this like quilted top carving, and and I mean, it's just so stupid, and it was just like this turn, this sea change. Yes. And then like people would post like, hey man, I got a 64 P bass, and be like, cool, JMJ just got like a purple BC Rich. Like that was the thing, that stuff was the stuff that was exciting, like Spectres, and man, it's hilarious how that stuff just goes in these crazy waves.
Yeah.
But I'm here for it all, man. I'm here for it all.
I am. It's all cool. I'm here. Yeah.
Same.
Now that the PV decade is $1,000 or whatever it is, just because of Josh Homme, anything's possible.
Exactly.
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible. Man, I mean, and that PV stuff is going to come roaring back. Like, and I've just been waiting, because that logo that triangle-y, like pointy logo that we all thought was so dumb, it is part of like American guitar history.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, dude. And it
Yeah.
will be back, and and like people, it'll be kind of ironic at first, but yeah, I mean I think that's already starting. Decade. Exactly. Yeah. It's like, actually this stuff is really cool. And people have been secretly playing like classic 30s and 50s for a long time. And of course the 5150, I mean,
Oh yeah. Oh, like, actually look at this. For the ultimate example of what we're talking about, it's on my head.
Oh yes, dude.
For everyone,
does that say PV powered?
No, that says Benson.
It says Benson.
Chris did this run of hats with the against his attorney's wishes,
so I can't see it. But yes, dude, amazing.
Yeah,
and there's a guy too that makes like the decade preamp and a pedal, and my buddy just bought one, and it's pink.
Mm-hmm.
And
the 10 years.
10 years. Mm-hmm. That's right. And I thought that it was a PV product when I saw it. I was like, and I thought to myself, that's so smart, because there's somebody that they hired in branding that gets it, that understands that enough time has passed, and that is now going to be cool again. And they're leaning into the colors. They're not trying to hide it. They're not trying to redesign the logo. No, they're going back to and then he was like, no, it's not PV. And I'm like, oh man, PV needs to get hip, dude. They need to hire you for their branding. You know what I mean? They need to figure it out, dude. Let's go.
I wish they would.
They might.
The first time I thought that might be happening was I was at NAMM, and I was just walking around, and I walked by the PV booth, and I saw some of the people there had trucker hats with the PV logo on them. And in my soul, I was like, I want that hat.
I know.
I want that hat now.
You do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Give me that hat. And I still don't have that hat, but I still want it.
You got to get the hat.
I want that hat.
Yeah.
So I've been looking. I can't find the hat. So it's not for lack of trying. Well, hey, dude, I know we're getting close to the end of the episode here. We've had some great conversation.
So
I thoroughly
fun,
enjoyed it. Yes.
I wish we could keep rolling, dude. But let's do more again sometime soon. But yeah, please. What else you got? I'm ready. Hit me.
All right. So I got 2 classic questions to ask to wrap this up. But before I do that, this is when I like to give the guests the chance to take the floor. You know, you're right now you're talking to a few thousand people. I know it just looks like you and I, but there's a few thousand people hearing this. And
dude, I know you're doing so awesome. I love it, man.
Thank you. If there's anything you want to get out there to a few thousand people that we haven't already covered, now's the chance.
I think that everybody's got something to say. I think that you're listening right now and you're feeling like kind of stuck, and maybe you're on reverb like a little too much, and like maybe you need to look through your phone. Here's what I want to say. Instead of like, here's the things that coming up for me, I would rather do a thing where I say like, right after you're done listening to this, go into your voice memos and find the riff or the lyric idea or the beat or whatever it is for you that you think is the coolest, that maybe you've been saving, and think of a friend or artist or colleague or whatever that you want to send it to spark the next creative endeavor. I think that's what I want to say.
I like that. That's perfect. That is awesome. All right. 2 classic questions and we'll wrap this thing up.
Let's do it.
The first one. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
My favorite Boss pedal, two raced to mind. Dude, I love Boss pedals so much. My favorite is all the brown boxes. So the OC2.
Oh, OC2. Yes.
OC2 is so sick on bass. And then, the OC3 gets a lot of hate. The OC3 is amazing. The OC3 has some gain in it as well. It has like a drive circuit. Mm-hmm. People sleep on the OC3. It's called the Super Octave. Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, oh, that one sucks. It doesn't suck. It's really good, and it's actually really affordable. So if you can't find or afford an OC2, get an OC3. They also make an OC5, which is like the modern one, and that one's really good too. But if you find an old OC3 somewhere for $60, that's the score. My second favorite Boss pedal of all time is the Dimension Chorus, because of the buttons and the purple, and it sounds like Prince. And I live in Minneapolis, and it makes me so happy. Dude, the Boss Dimension, and those two together for bass, hey, just FYI, is an unbelievable combo. OC2, octave soloed, no dry, no octave 2, octave 1 soloed, with either 1 or 4 on the Dimension is synth bass nirvana.
Ooh, I don't have a Dimension. Why don't I have a Dimension?
Get that Waza Dimension, dude.
Why don't I have
that Waza Dimension? It's super sick.
I gotta get it. I gotta get it.
He's on reverb right now.
Right now. Click.
I love that pedal. Yeah.
All right. Final question. This is the one that gets a little dicey, a little controversial. So
can't wait.
Here we go. What's your favorite kind of pizza?
Dude, okay. Like, are we talking about toppings, or are we talking about
the
style
whole
of pizza?
Everything, style, particular pizzeria? You got one more pizza to eat in your life. This is your top pizza.
Here's the thing. I can't do one. I'm slumming it, and I'm fancy. Okay, so I'm gonna go both. Okay. If I gotta slum it, and I'm going Jets pizza, dude. Jets pizza, delicious. Square pan. I'm gonna get pepperoni jalapeno. It is delicious. Corner pieces taste delicious. That is my favorite cheap pizza for sure. And then fancy pizza, I'm gonna give it to my hometown. Well, not my hometown, but the town that I live in, Minneapolis. Pizza Luce, an incredible pizza establishment. They make a thing called a Ruby Ray. It's upside down, so it's cheese on the bottom. Then they do a layer of spinach. Then they do a layer of super spicy marinara and these big chunks of like homemade Italian sausage. And dude, it's sort of like a deep dish without it being like a traditional actual like layered deep dish. Right. It's incredible. So Jets Pizza and Pizza Luce, baby, all day long.
Okay, man. Jets Pizza. This is a slightly uncommon situation that has arisen. Jets is something I've heard of and seen, and I went, I am curious, but we do not have one around here. So I have been curious about Jets for a while. So You're making me
listen.
I
If you
gotta
like
do it.
spicy too, go get a pepperoni jalapeno from Jets. Eat that corner piece first. I'm telling you, dude. I'm not even overselling it. It's delicious. You just got to know. You just got to be cool to do. It's like high-low, right? It's like you have a fancy pizza that you like, and you've got that like OG greasy $5 pizza that you like, and that's dude. I'm telling you, Jets is the best one.
And then on the other side, I have also heard of Pizza Luce before.
Oh,
So
yeah.
So I was like, oh, he's gotten, all right.
Oh, Luce,
all right.
Luce is incredible. And they do these amazing like events and block parties, and they put on these big bike rides. I mean, I just love the organization, the company as well. But that Ruby Ray pizza, man. Next time, if you ever get out to Minneapolis, let's go hit Pizza Luce. Dude, we'll do a bang bang. I'll tell you what, we're going to hit Jets first.
Okay.
We're going to get a slice of that pepperoni jalapeno.
Oh,
please. We're not even going to leave that much room, dude, but it's all good because then we're going to go to Pizza Luce and we're going to get that Ruby Ray and we're going to stuff it down and it's going to be a great night. So that's you and me in Minneapolis together, just palling down, dude, talking about guitars and basses, eating pizza.
Absolutely. We got to do it. We'll make it happen.
Amazing.
Dude, thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, man.
All right, everybody. For Ian, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones.
Take care, everybody.
All right, there you have it. There's another one in the can. Please make sure you check out Ian on the interwebs. I think he puts most of his eggs in the Instagram basket, so give him a follow at his name there, Ian Martin Allison, and that will, of course, be linked in the show notes. Hit me up if you need anything, info@tonemob.com. I'm always around trying to lend assistance wherever I possibly can. And if you could, please share this with somebody that you think might like it. Please share this with anyone that you think would get some value out of it. I really, really appreciate everybody that does that because honestly, without that happening, the show doesn't exist. And, quite frankly, I'm out of a job and my family seems to like to do this thing called eating food. So, if you could keep sharing this, keep this thing going, I would super, super appreciate it. I really, really appreciate all the support. Thank you so much. And I will be talking to you on the internet very soon. Later, hosen. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Hi, this is Paul Phelps.
And this is Monica Strutt.
And we're from the Daily Music Business Podcast. We're joined by a number of other really great hosts in creating daily content with great advice for independent musicians just like you.
That's right. We put out episodes daily on all topics from music marketing to branding, advice on signing with a manager and label, and anything else you need to up-level the business side of your music career. We've got it covered.
Subscribe to the Daily Music Business Podcast today on your favorite podcast catcher.
Subscribe today to the Daily Music Business Podcast on your favorite podcast platform.
Hey, this is Chris Swinney, formerly of the Ataris and currently host of That One Time on Tour, part of the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Have you ever wondered what it's really like on the road? The highs can be euphoric, but the lows can be crushing. Join me every week as I chat with industry pros about what it's like living out their wildest dream and, in some cases, their worst nightmare. Past guests of the show include members of NoFX, Pennywise, Bad Religion, and more. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.